most of you. So when we're thinking about what the future is of AI for agriculture and how you're going to get value from it, I think many people have a good concept now of where computers being smart could help you make better decisions. And it's hard now to pin down exactly where it's going to be, though, and where in doing your farming it's going to appear. And so that's what I want to talk about here, is what we're seeing in terms of where artificial intelligence is starting to help with farming. And in the UK, and for UK agriculture, what's that main mode of consumption of benefit going to look like? I've been following the developments of advanced analytics in agriculture and trying things out for many years. It's an extremely frustrating process much of the time, just like farming in itself. You know, you're trying to harvest value from this potential, from the data and from the algorithms, and it so often falls down that I'm just not seeing the value from it. It's just not benefiting me enough. It's not reliable enough. I'm concerned about where the data's going. You know, there's all sorts of reasons why something doesn't work. All very valid concerns. But over time, we're starting to see these different potential elements coming together. And with the likes of ChatGPT, for example, we're starting to see a change in the experience. Something's that's a bit more channeled to just more directly giving us a sharp, snappy answer to the question we're asking. And that is the change with ChatGPT. Before you would go, okay, where do I want to go on holiday? You search into Google, or you ask your friends or whatever, you get lots of answers, and you speak to someone you really trust who knows you well, you'll get a very good answer. Just like your financial advisor, if you've got one, or your tax advisor, knows about your background and your aspirations, is able to distill that down to a particular recommendation. Or your agronomist, your farm advisor, who consolidates all that information and then goes, well, these things are uncertain. I know you're trying to achieve this. I know you're uncertain about these things, and therefore I think this is the best advice for you. When we think about what we want from artificial intelligence, it would be good if we could have something that was a bit closer to that in terms of took nuance into account, consolidated all that information, and said simply, this is the decision you could take with regards to your question, rather than reams and reams and reams of search results. That it's just, the phrase is drowning in data, or being data rich, but insights poor. And I think we're a lot in that space right now of really having a lot of things that seem to be telling us something, but how do we distill it down into actually just making a better decision in the moment? It's often talked about as being a big revolution in agriculture. And certainly in other areas it's talked about as being a revolution. My personal perspective on the impact that AI will have in agriculture is less that it will be a revolution like how tractors transformed the shape and nature of agriculture, or how certainly fertilizer transformed it. I think it's much more like how data and analytics has transformed athletics, or Formula One, or sport. It's that fine-tuning on the different sources of information that we have to just eke that bit more out, do that bit better. But in terms of thinking what of the fundamental things that we do in farming is changing, it's worth thinking about artificial intelligence in that context. In the mechanical revolution with tractors, what was the fundamental need that got addressed? It was labor. We got horsepower as a service now. And that didn't stop us from doing lots of physical labor on farms. We just got more labor as a service, and we applied our human physical labor in a different direction, and that transformed the shape and nature of farms themselves. With fertilizer, what was it? It was nutrition. We've got now much more efficient, effective nutrition as a service, and that changed everything. The soils, condition of the soils, the crops we grow, and both of those, with costs and benefits. And also with a phenomenon that we kind of see in AI, that you go back to those technologies. It's not as if having a tractor stopped physical labor, and actually you end up having to deal with bugs and problems in your tractor and ending up doing physical labor for that. And the same with nitrogen. You still got to, just like we saw before, think about what that nutrient balance is for your soil, obviously. So the transformation with artificial intelligence is now getting some of that thinking as a service. And that's what you should be looking for, is that some of that reasoning that you or your advisor is doing and going, what does this mean, is being done by something else. That doesn't mean that you're not thinking. It's just that you're able to go, all right, that's dealing with that. Now I'm thinking about the results that the artificial intelligence is telling me. And that should be the shift, as you've got more time, because we're awash with now data that's coming from our different systems, and we waste in many cases, and we certainly spend a lot of time trying to figure out what the heck does this mean. And so that's where that injection of AI is coming in. One of the troubles with AI is it's harder to pin to an object. With the tractor, then you can see there's things that look like tractors, and okay, that's the technology. Fertilizer is the same. You run it through your fingers, you put it on the fields. But what does AI look like? And it's, of course, different in that case. It appears in different places. It's on your phone. It's in your farm management software. It's in the device that you put in the field. So it's a bit more intangible in that context. But then when you think about, if I gave this talk 30 years ago and asked, what will the microchip do for agriculture? It's obvious that having computation on farms, whether it's driving your John Deere tractor or running your farm management system, has had a massive effect on what we do, of course, behind our phones. And all the AI is software that sits on the computation and distills things together to help provide some insight, some reason on top. So you'll be aware of the different places that we see it, but this is where it's going to start to appear. Of course, in the devices, in your robots, your self-driving tractors, and of course in your farm management systems. Alerts are infuriating, and they're everywhere. And you just wish they'd shut up many times, but they're getting better and better. And saving us time in knowing what to pay attention to is, of course, a really accessible benefit from AI, whether it's in a device like this. This is one of Bayer's recent innovations, where rather than just saying there's insects in your field and giving you just an insect abundance through time, the AI is in the software and going, no, it's this specific insect. And then it's reasoning over that and going, is it above a threshold abundance? Really working to separate that signal from noise. And that's what you should be expecting. You should expect more now from the sensors and devices and saying, I don't just want a high-resolution map of nitrogen. I want to know where I'm over or under, like we saw in the previous talk. And so doing more of that thinking in the background so you can go faster to a particular decision. Or it could be, once you've got up, then got out of bed, these are the the key things that you planned to do. And that coming from your farm management system, for example. So that's getting better and better. It's getting sharper and sharper, of course. We're very familiar with preemptive things in the technologies that we use now. Preemptive search, figuring out what you're going to be what you're about to write in documents, in our predictive text on our phones. And that's being tuned now, of course, to our agricultural software. And I think this is a great potential time saving. Imagine then within Omnia, for example, that then on the back of what you've put in about your farm, what you've planned before, what potential agronomy knowledge is encoded in there, and then going, well, here's a suggested plan for the coming years. Here's it filled in, and you can start to tune it as you like, interact, but much more of that being done preemptively if that's what you want. You might not want the suggestions, but people tend to jump to it quite quickly when they see just how much time it's saving them, allowing them to get faster to a better result. Of course, precision is the big one, precision in space and in time. And of course, in Omnia and with TerraMap particularly, precision in space is very apparent. Being able to zoom in on where we need to pay attention to. And we've seen the use of artificial intelligence, of course, in that for many years, being able to go, look, these are low nitrogen zones. These are, this hyperspectral image is telling us about a problem with crop nutrition over here. Often they're using 1 or 2 layers. And we saw, like in the talk before, that bringing together of information from multiple streams. You see with TerraMap, you get many layers, like 20 layers of different nutrients. And for a soil expert, that's really hard to reason over and think, okay, so what is this telling me? Where is there a hard pan? Where do I have a drainage problem? That's where you're going to start to see that injection of then much more consolidated identification of this is the thing that you need to pay attention to. So rather than this is how soil texture is varying across the field, this is where we need to do an aeration treatment, just recommendation zones rather than just distributions of different soil properties. And it's the same in time. So being able to, for example, pinpoint, okay, now is the time to apply this fertilizer input, or now is certainly not the time. Do not apply, because you're just throwing it away. It's going to rain, it's all going to wash away, or you're going to upset the government. One of the big changes I think we're going to see is actually a whole set of better crop inputs, I think. The various applications we use as pesticides, as herbicides, as fertilizer. One of the big breakthroughs from the recent AI developments has AlphaFold, done by DeepMind, which on the back of them learning how to beat chess champions and play the game of Go, they got it to really be a revolutionary application, which led to the CEO of DeepMind getting a Nobel Prize just a couple of months ago. It's revolutionized our ability to understand structure of biochemistry. So it has an understanding of how molecules interact. You add the data, and it just completely has changed the world of identifying what the structure of molecules actually is, leading to, since the breakthrough 4 years ago or so, over 1 million scientists and analysts around the world are using this now to go, well, I'm not working it out anymore. It's just working it out for me. Which then the thinking about, okay, so how do we make a chemical that doesn't have these properties, that does target just these specific insects, that does have these ingredients, and so it's sustainable? We can screen those far faster. And so while we're seeing allowable traditional chemicals going down, I think that we'll start to see a reaction on the back of this sort of technology. Another, in terms of inputs, is what we type into our system in order to get our information and insight. And our ChatGPT interfaces is going to start to appear in your software in terms of, for example, in your farm management system, it's an obvious thing to do to just say, what is this telling me about what my fertilizer application schedule should be? And it providing you distilled answers rather than, well, here's lots of maps for you to work out. But the question is, how is that going to change what you do in doing your agriculture in the UK? We're awash with technologies where we're uncertain about exactly how they will function, and we then look to see who's done it already. And of course, a key route by us adopting new AI is just giving it a go in the new technologies and seeing, if we're not an early adopter, then what an early adopter has done and what's been the success. But I do think that a critical role in the UK is going to be the advisor. We're very used to in many walks of life, like in healthcare. We expect, we're comfortable, many of us, I'd say most of us, with our doctor using the best available science and technology to advise us about what we should do. Doing all that distillation and putting the primary importance on having a human-to-human conversation about, I know you, I know your risk appetite, I know what you're wanting to do, this is what I think that you should, these are my recommendations, and you can pick from them, or you should do this if you want to achieve that. And I think that's the changing role of the farm advisor, is to be leveraging the best available technology, where some's unproven, some's only reliable in certain circumstances, some's very well proven, but really hard to use. And the farm advisor being the conduit through which the farmer is benefiting from AI. So it's the farm advisor is then able to more quickly identify and distill information about you and your farm to provide better advice. But getting these superpowers from AI to stop them having to spend so much thinking time without assistance over all the data, but help being augmented by that. And of course, that happens in healthcare all the time. And I think that that's a better way for a lot of farmers to be able to have this technology proven out, because then you've got an agronomist trialing these things in different circumstances with different farms and speaking to other agronomists about the appropriateness for your circumstances. So ultimately, what this is meaning for yourselves, I think that the change, the impact in AI, I guess you should be asking from the different technologies, particularly if it's providing you with suggestions of things to do. It's particularly the question to ask the agronomist, as well you do, I know, is this enabling me to make better decisions? So, that's what it, like the tractor was more energy and more time for me to spend physically on doing other things around the farm. And our fertilizer was, allowing me to then do other sorts of fine tuning. Now that I've got crop nutrition sorted, this is, okay, now I can make better decisions because I'm able to get these recommendations and then more quickly understand what the alternative decisions are that I actually could make. So be very exacting about, but be demanding about what's good enough for you to adopt an AI technology in these different offerings that are coming. But I think collaboration with your agronomist on this, or your farm advisor, is a great way to go ahead really trying to test and scrutinize the value of these and harvest that value, of course, into your farming business. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Matthew. There are some questions on here which have popped up. One from Tom Allen Stevens down the front here.
Okay.
He says, and I don't know if his data is exactly right, there are around 14 trillion decisions taken from seed to supermarket shelf.
By an individual?
By anyone, I don't know. How many of these can AI help with? You mentioned some sort of process there, but what do you think actually, how helpful is it?
Oh, I think it's hugely helpful. So I think that in doing this a lot, you ask the question, where can this decision-making be automated? And often you end up with processing being done by humans that could be automated, and all that time and energy going into that, so that when you get to the 1% of the time you have to reason over everything, you feel, oh, I just wish I had a bit more time to think about this. And of course, that's why we go for financial advisors and doctors and other experts who they're using all this stuff. And it's, in the past, they would have been scanning the X-ray images and looking at the blood samples and things like that. That's still being considered, but you've got the automation taking care of the 80% of that thinking that we did in the past, and then going, okay, so I know what the bloods are doing, I know what this is telling me about skin properties, therefore much more quickly I can give you a diagnosis. So I think the majority, to be honest.
Well, excellent. Another question here, is there such a thing as too much data in terms of potentially muddying the waters over what can and can't be changed or managed?
Yeah, I think it's rampant. I think it's an epidemic of too much data. All right, we want better quality data, we want the right data, there's maybe the wrong data, but the problem you end up with one of the most deflating things is when you really embrace, okay, we're going to be data driven, is you go, oh no, we're really drowning in data. After all this effort, we're not able to make a better decision. And it's like going, okay, so I'm going to take care, really go into improving my health. I'm going to invest in all these things, and I've got all these apps. Now I should be healthier, and actually I'm feeling worse because I've just got lots of confusing things, and I've got no time. And so that's part of the curve. Because just like, the fishing analogy, you go to catch your first fish, and then you try and catch as many as possible, and then you go to quality. And I think for data, we're kind of get as much as possible. We haven't thought about what does quality actually mean. It actually means, back to the fishing analogy, catching less fish.
Fewer fish.
Fewer fish.
Sorry. That's the pedant. Okay. Thank you very much. Matthew Smith from Hypernature. Thank you.